Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. If I may make a little commercial for my own show. This is exactly the sort of hour you would want to hear a second and a third time, and that's why we make Pragertopia available, where you can download all of my shows at a simple $7 a month. And you also get Alan Estrin, my producer's comments on every article that is sent to me. It's a very worthwhile feature, and in the highest fidelity. And I'll tell you, this is exactly the sort of hour that needs to be played for all Americans as we evolve or devolve into the European model. The piece is the Europe Syndrome and the Challenge to American Exceptionalism. It's published from The American, and it is linked at pragerradio.com, the blog area, 18Prager776. He argues that they certainly do take care of your economic needs in Europe, or at least in Western Europe, and much of Western Europe, but the deep satisfactions of life are increasingly made unavailable. They come from family, community, vocation, and faith. And as the government, I'm summarizing here, and as the government intrudes more and more into those areas, it takes the not just the pleasure, which it does, but it takes the meaningfulness and the struggle, and there's no meaning without struggle out of all of these. By the way, you might find a theological point of interest. Israel, the name Israel, which is, of course, the name given to Jacob, the third patriarch of the Bible, it means struggle with God. Struggle is necessary everywhere in life for meaning, even theologically. So I just thought I'd give you a little theological basis for your argument.
I think it's perfectly appropriate. Maybe the word struggle is too negative in the sense that it makes it sound like it's unpleasant. Just think of any time that you have felt that glow of, by golly, that was great. It's almost always been when you've been deeply focused and you've had to try hard. So use the phrase "try hard" instead of struggle. You have to try
effort.
hard in order to get any satisfaction out of something.
So again, now the European model, which is the Democratic Party's model here, as it becomes a socialist Democratic Party on the European model, as opposed to classical American liberal, is that the government takes the effort that you have to put into family, community, vocation, and faith. All right, we talked about family, whether it's daycare, whether it is taking care of the the woman who has become pregnant and gives birth out of wedlock, whereas in the past the obligation would have fallen on the two of them. Not any longer. It now falls on the community. And now the latest statistic, as I know you know, Charles Murray, is 40% of American births in 2007 were out of wedlock.
It's a figure that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was already high 20 years ago.
That's right. All right, next is community. How has government intrusion helped destroy community?
Well, let's go back and think about what communities used to be responsible for. And I don't mean just little towns in Iowa like the one I grew up in. I mean neighborhoods in big cities. Essentially, all sorts of social glue depended on what the people in that local neighborhood did for each other. So when you had people who were unemployed in that neighborhood, it was their neighbors and so forth who in various kinds of organizations helped take care of them. When problems needed to be solved of all kinds, everything from how to get enough clean water to how to help the elderly, it had to be the community that did it because there wasn't anybody else who was going to do it. And because of that, you again, and I can't emphasize this enough, Dennis, you got expectations built up, you got social norms, and most of all, you got social rewards and social punishments built into that. And you had communities who function. These, once again, are not things that are a lot of fun to do. And so if somebody comes to my door and says, gee, Charles, do you want to go out and help feed the hungry? My question's going to be, well, if I don't do it, what's going to happen? And if somebody says to me, oh, well, we've got a $25 billion food stamp program to feed the hungry, I'm going to say, fine, you use that. I'll sit here and watch television. If somebody says to me, you have neighbors who are hungry, and if you don't do anything, they're going to stay hungry. I will get up out of my easy chair and go do it. I'm simplifying, but that's the dynamic. And so,
well, and you provide the data, as you say, data prove this. I mean, just that the more left you go in social terms, the less charity is given, because that mentality says the government will take care of the person.
Oh, there's lots of data on this, Dennis, where you can look at the size of voluntary organizations in the United States that used to be engaged in this kind of self-help activity, which had millions of members, some of these organizations nationwide. And after the New Deal, and you started getting government moving into these areas, they just shriveled. They shriveled both in size, and they also shriveled in the kinds of responsibilities they took up. Now, this is not really subject to much debate. That's what happens. And it also, I want to emphasize this, because it is not a matter of, gee, we didn't design the program right. It is inevitable. If the government says we will take some of the responsibility for dealing with these problems, then you are going to take that much vitality away from these institutions. There is no way to have a partnership that avoids that absolute certain enfeeblement.
All right, let's go to some calls. 1-8-PRAGER-776. I'm speaking to and with Charles Murray. Nicholas in Los Angeles, thank you for calling. You're on with Charles Murray and me.
Hi, Charles. Hi, Dennis. I'm a long-time listener.
Right.
And I must say you're so eloquent, Charles, and you make total sense. Philosophically, it makes total sense. All you have to do is when there's take the example of someone who was born out of a very rich family, how unhappy it is to have everything paid for them, and we know how that works. However, as someone who's lived for many, many years in Western Europe, as an American, and I do agree that the welfare state in Europe makes for very lazy people at times, and there's some exaggerations that go beyond the pale. But overall, the facts don't bear you out, because what I'm looking at is the cost-benefit situation here. There is definitely the cost that you mentioned of a community that is broken apart by the government, but the benefit is such that I think we have to do it. For example, in Europe, there's far fewer teenage pregnancies. The high school graduation rates are much higher. Overall, I think it was determined that the cost of letting a piece of society fall apart because it does not have the proper support is too great a cost. And I do think there is room, and obviously not on the Soviet level, but on the Western European level, for that kind of help.
All right, we want to get a response from Charles Murray. All right,
perfectly reasonable point, Nicholas.
Right, and we're going to get your response as soon as we come back. I don't want to interrupt it for the break. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. I'm speaking to Charles Murray. His piece is up at PragerRadio.com. You can also get just this show if you want, calling 800-225-8584, 800-225-8584.